The agenda is there, flighted in the screen. Honorable Paulson Saubon. I want to confirm the presence of Honorable Mkono, Honorable Bryant, Honorable Paulson, Honorable Gancho, Honorable Singh, Honorable Phillips, Honorable Weber. That's it. And let me welcome you, Peter Paul Mbele. I know you are standing in for Chileka.
And thank you, Chairperson.
Apology. It's good to see you. Chileka, she's at the hospital. We want to wish her well. And Mr. Mbele is standing in for her. Sorry, my apologies. And then the other apologies that has been sent to me, the minister is attending the select committee in Parliament. And then the DG is on leave. Honorable Mbata is still on sick leave. Yeah, and then the deputy minister is the leader of the delegation. She will then introduce the team that she has brought along as and when we start with the meeting. So the agenda is as flighted here. But before that, honorable members, you'll recall we were supposed to be having a colloquium today. Yeah, then I should say we have been trying to get hold of our counterparts as agreed in the previous meetings. And then when we check with them, they told us that they are currently on oversight. And then they are also involved in the KZN flood disaster. And then they are presently very occupied such that we can't move with them. And I'm of the view, colleagues, that if we can choose to move without them, as they have the legislation on their sites, on our part, I believe we have the Wildlife Welfare Forum, which is our minister exploratory idea. And then we all know that there are issues that are not well grounded as per our last interaction. And then I should think then we can decide as this committee that we look exclusively on those issues in our portfolio so that we can then decide to move. And then I'm amenable to your ideas, dear colleagues, on how do we then move forward. You want to quickly have a bite on these, colleagues, before we proceed with the adoption of the agenda? Can you remove the agenda? I want to see who want to speak on this matter in the meantime on the screen. Yes, Honorable Singh will be followed by Honorable Bryant in that order.
No, good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues, and to the admin team and the Deputy Minister. No, I think this is an extremely, extremely important matter. And, I think when we had a joint meeting with the other colleagues, we kind of said there would be this toing and froing. And we've got to pin them down to a date while we understand what is happening. We've got to pin them down to a date. And whilst I got the floor, Honorable Chairperson, I've just been going through my files as well last night. I think another matter that requires us to discuss urgently is the UPL matter. Given the floods and the impact and what has happened there and the estuary and everything else, I think we've got to know exactly where we are because it's months since that incident. And we must try and get that meeting urgently, even if we have to do it in the Free State while we are there on Friday after lunch or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague. Your inputs are noted and very valuable. Honorable Bryant.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'll concur with what Honourable Singh has just raised in terms of the urgency and the importance of hosting this colloquium. And I'd just like to thank you for following through and following up on this on behalf of the committee. It really is appreciated, and for your persistence in ensuring that we follow through and that we now host it. If it's not going to happen from the Dalrad side, so just from our side. You certainly would have 100% support, and you just let us know if there's anything that any of the members can assist with, and we will provide that. I think the most important thing now is just nailing down a date and ensuring that we have the right officials present, so that we can go through that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. Any other? And Honourable Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually not on the animal colloquium, although I absolutely support what my colleagues have just said. But as Honourable Singer said, the other outstanding issue that is very, very serious is the St. Lucia estuary issue. Although the mouth is breached, the farmlands are still flooded. And it's now been more than a month since the report came out, and there seems to be no action happening there. The farmers there are really, really desperate. And if they don't get the river dredged and the drains cleaned soon, the estuary mouth is going to close again. And then we are going to sit with the same problem. So it's really, really time sensitive, that one. And then the other one that I need to raise, and it just doesn't even seem to be making the press, are the rhinos that are being absolutely slaughtered in Umfuluzi Shoshluwi. My last count was 106 since January. I don't know what we can do about that, and I'm just putting that out to you and my colleagues. Thank you so much, Chair, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Under the circumstances, can we have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of today's agenda, colleagues? Honorable Dave Brandt's hand is up.
Yes, Chairperson, I would like to move, but just very first, there's one other thing I forgot, unfortunately, just very quickly, Chairperson, and that was the items on the fishing processes. I know we couldn't have that meeting, unfortunately, because of the plenaries, but if it's possible, would we still be able to fit those in this term? Because I think those are also very important, very pertinent matters. But with that, yes, I would move for the adoption of today's agenda. Thanks.
No, it's fine. Let's brainstorm while we're in the Free State on all those matters, and then let's get the dates together on Saturday. Then we can deal with this other issue. I thank you for moving for the adoption of the agenda. The team, I think they've noted all the inputs. We'll see how to we then rework our program before the end of this term. Then the second, Honorable.
On the adoption, Chairperson. The agenda.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, colleagues. Having said that, let me take this opportunity to welcome you, Deputy Minister, and the team. Colleagues, you all know that today we're going to get a briefing on the progress on the transformation of the forestry sector, and also on resolving inherent challenges faced by the forestry branch, including the following, as well as any other matters that the department would like to bring to our attention as the committee. First, DPDM would like to know the status of the plantation forests and ownership of respective categories of plantations A, B, and C. We would also like to specifically know the hectareage or size of the plantation forests in each category, the size of those successfully claimed, and what they are currently being used for, and by whom. And then if rented, we'll need the details on who leased the particular plantation in question, to whom was it leased, and whether rentals are being regularly paid as they should. And if not, how does the department then recover outstanding rental fees. The department should also further clarify as how much is owed and by who, respectively. In addition, the department should also clarify what happens in case of the leased plantation if that lease plantation are successfully claimed by communities and when the lease contract is still on, especially when the lessee is a non-paying one. And then the other issue that we want you to address, Deputy Minister and the team, would like to also to be briefed on the number of hectares in each plantation forest category that is currently undergoing claims. And those in each category, both A, B, and OC, not affected by land claims to date. The other issue, Deputy Minister, we have had an opportunity to look at the white paper on sustainable forest development of 1996. And when you go through that white policy DM, the paper presents a clear and explicit policy towards the restructuring or privatization of industrial plantations. The white paper, it further states that government does not intend to remain in the management of the industrial forestry and goes on to provide the following objective for these assets, which I find it very interesting. I quote from the paper. It says that we must ensure that these resources are managed for the benefit of local communities while satisfying national interests and pursue a course which will benefit current employees while maintaining efficiency. Furthermore, 4 key factors have consistently underscored this restructuring policy objective, which comprise the recognition that it is more appropriate for the private sector to perform an essentially commercial function. The state's historical role distorted roundwood prices through the long-term timber supply contracts, which contributed to inefficiencies in the sawmilling sector. The other issue that's mentioned there is the state's ownership of industrial forests, which potentially conflicts with its wider national regulatory and policy obligation. And the fourth element that deals with the desire to reduce the financial burden of running industrial forestry operation, particularly those of the former homelands, on the state. Deputy Minister, this is your policy, yet nearly 26 years later, the department is still managing plantation or industrial forests with severe strain on the limited budget that you have. For example, for about 70% of the forestry branch budget is allocated for salaries. What could be the remaining 30% be used for beyond office space and equipment? Why then are we surprised that the department has high levels of temporary unplanted areas, land invasion by communities, which has become a norm, the timber theft, and the limited regulatory and enforcement capacity? It's obvious, or where one is missing it, DM. Please assure that things are not as bad as they appear. Having said that, let me hand over to you, DM. The team. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to yourself, and good morning to honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. Chair, as I have indicated, as you have indicated, that I need to indicate the team that is accompanying me to the Portfolio Committee. We are accompanied by the acting DG, Ms. Mamukhadi Mashala, and together with the acting DDG responsible for forestry management, which is Ms. Phumeza Nodada, of whom we are familiar with. And I have also then Ms. Cabello Walaza. Cabello Walaza is Chief Director that we have transferred, or we have taken from another a branch in the department to reinforce the forestry management in order for him to focus mainly on issues of transformation because of his expertise. And we have also the acting CD, which is Mr. Kimwe, because Ms. Susan is on sick leave. From there, all the other staff members that are on the list are staff from both my office and the office of the minister and the DG. Chairperson, I'm not going to waste time. I've noted all the issues that you have highlighted in your opening remark, especially issues that has to do with the white paper on the sustainable forest development. And the team that is here, Chair, it's a team that will try their best to give information with regard to the areas that you have just mentioned, because you need to be aware that this team is the team that has been in the forestry while the forestry was in Department of Agriculture. Therefore, to them, it will be of very useful for them to assist us in order for us to get that information so that members of parliament can satisfy themselves with regard to the branch function, that is the forestry branch. Then without any waste of time, Chairperson, can I then maybe give over to acting DG Mamkhadi, because I'm sure that she is a new DDG responsible for another branch, but because I think it will be proper if she can just show her face and greet the members and then give over to the person who's supposed then to take us through. I thank you very much, Chairperson. Member Mkhadi.
Before that, GM, can we celebrate my 8-month anniversary with the committee? But on a sad note, because since I joined this portfolio, there's been an acting DDG for forestry. Can you address us? When are you filling the vacancy? Because it can't be an 8 months turnaround time.
No, you are correct, Chairperson. You are correct. We had some challenges, but not at the level of myself and the minister. But the challenges was at the level of Department of Public Service and Admin with regard to the other people that applied before. And then they were turned back because there were some people who felt that they were not given an opportunity to apply because, there was a problem with some of the CVs that they couldn't get, but the members felt that they did send their CVs, but the CVs were not received by the department. Then we thought maybe for us to have a smooth process, we needed then to start afresh the process, and hence we started afresh the process. But as I'm speaking to you now, we were through with the interviews and we've signed through the document to the DPSA, and then I think from there it's going to the cabinet. It's a matter of some few weeks, then we'll get response from the cabinet. But everything is with the cabinet as I'm talking to you. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, dear. Acting DG, over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, DM, and Honorable members. My name is Mamokadi Mashala. I'm the DDG for Corporate Management, acting on behalf of the DG. Honorable members, we are going to be presenting and providing feedback and updates in terms of the transformation of the forestry sector to this particular effect. If we can load the presentation, we are going to talk to the progress that which we have made since the Cabinet took a decision to restructure the state-owned plantations as part of transformation. And we will then be focusing on the different categories in terms of the plantations from both category A, B, and C. We will talk to the background in terms of each of the categories, looking at the status in terms of the ownership as well as land claim status. We will also then talk to the lease rentals in this particular regard. We will then provide an update in terms of all the plantations that which we are managing, the challenges in terms of land invasions, and also provide proposals in terms of how we intend on dealing with these particular areas. And lastly, Chair, we will then talk progress in terms of how we intend on implementing the master plan to address some of these particular challenges. I'm not going to waste time. I'm going to request the acting DDG, Ms. Pumeza Nodada, to take us through the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning to the DM, Chairperson, honorable members, and I've lost my screen. I don't know if I'm audible.
Audible, acting DDG.
Okay, I don't know if my camera is on, Chair. I've lost my second screen. Okay. Apologies about that.
Okay.
Thank you very much for this opportunity for us to come and do this presentation to the Portfolio Committee. Now, in terms of the introduction that has been given by the acting DG and the Deputy Minister, I will just go straight into the presentation itself. And I will jump with the 2 slides. The first slide is the table of contents that we are dealing with. And then the second one is on the acronyms that we have provided. And then in terms of the category A plantations, I think just to mention that based on the work that was done in the late 1990s, for the privatization of state plantations, there were 3 categories that were identified on the plantations. Category A, which were the most productive plantations, and that could be taken through commercial purposes. And then it was the category Bs, which were medium productive. And then category Cs, which were mainly the woodlots that were established for the benefit of the communities. Now, in terms of the category As, in 2001, there was a decision that was taken by Cabinet with the support of the different government departments to restructure these plantations. And through that process, it was agreed that the sale of the assets, which would be the trees and the equipment, there would be a consortium that would have 75%, which would be a strategic partner and a BEE partner. And then the 25% of shares would then be for set aside, 16% set aside for communities, and then 9% set aside for workers. Based on this sale, there were 3 agreements that were signed. The first agreement was the Forestry lease agreement, which we usually refer to as a sustainable forest management agreement. This agreement is managed by us as a department. And then the 2 agreements, which is the shareholders agreement and the business sale agreement, are then managed by the Department of Public Enterprises. When the sustainable forest lease agreement was signed, it was agreed that the land would not be sold because at the time it was understood that there were land claims that had been lodged, even though the beneficiaries were not known because the process had just commenced. And to make sure that these beneficiaries then benefit from the use of their land, it was also agreed that the companies would then pay a lease rental on an annual basis, which would be market related, to make sure that that rental is accrued to the communities. Now, in terms of the Category A plantations that had been transferred to SAFCOL after SAFCOL was established in 1992, there were initially 5 packages that were established. There was one in KwaZulu-Natal, another one that spreads from KwaZulu-Natal to the Eastern Cape, another one in the Eastern Cape, another one in the Western Cape, and then the last one in Limpopo and Mpumalanga. So the first 2 agreements were signed in 2001, mainly for Siaqhubeka Forestry, which is in KwaZulu-Natal, that has Mondi as the majority shareholder, with the BE partners Imbokodo, Lima Balabala, Gurulwandle, and Kalakahle Trust. And then in that package, we have SAFCOL owning 25%, which is basically the 16% that was supposed to be for communities and the 9% for the workers. Then for Singesi, the one between the Eastern Cape from Umtata and down to KwaZulu-Natal around Howick, Sidara area. That one has a majority shareholding of from Hans Marinsky, and it's about 76,000 hectares. And this consortium has the Singelanga Directorate Trust, which is a community a trust of about 63 communities within the KZN and the Eastern Cape area where the plantations are. And then it also has the Eastern Cape Development Corporation as part of that, and then also SAFCOL as part of the shareholders. And then we have Amatole Forestry, which is down in the Eastern Cape around the Stutterham area. This list was signed in 2005 of about 25,000 hectares. And it's the majority shareholding is Fanram Investment, which is mainly the Rans family. And it has a SAFCOL and also the Workers' Trust as part of the shareholding. And then MTO Forestry was signed in 2005, about 106,000 hectares, with the majority shareholding from Global Forests and the BE partner Wild Pitch Investments, and then SAFCOL also has ownership. And then the SAFCOL package, which was never privatized around Limpopo and Mpumalanga provinces, that was signed off in 1994 before the privatization started, of about 187,000 hectares, and it's wholly owned by government. Now, moving from this slide into the next one, it shows the number of claims in each of the packages and the number of claims that have been settled. And we will note that the number of claims that are there versus the number that has been settled is not correlating due to the delays that have been experienced in terms of settling the claims, especially in the state plantations. Also, this slide just gives a percentage of the area that has been claimed, and there's an average of about 56% of the land that has been claimed by communities in these plantations. Then the next 3 slides give details in terms of in these 5 packages, what the communities that have claimed and in which district municipalities, and the names of the plantations, the hectares that have been claimed by the communities, the status of the claim, and also just comments in terms of how far the process is. We will see on this slide that only one claim has been totally settled, the one in Limpopo. This one is under SAFCOL. It has been settled and the land has been transferred to the Mamatrola community. The rest of the claims, Section 42 has been approved, but there are still challenges in some of them in terms of the transfer of land. That process is still underway with support from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And the last two claims are still within the land reform process within Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. In this slide, as a continuation from the previous one, we see that there's two claims that have been settled in KwaZulu-Natal. This is in the Siakubega package, where the land was transferred in 2001 to the Mbonambi community, and also in 2019 to the Mkhwanazi community. The rest of the claims are still under investigation, and there's some work that still needs to be done for them to be finalized. Then the next slide shows communities in the Eastern Cape under the Hans Marinsky package, the Singesi package, where we see that all the communities, they have had their submissions approved by the Minister of Rural Development, but they are still in the process of conveyancing and the appointment of some specialists to make sure that the areas that have been claimed tolerate, and then they can be finalized. Now, what had happened was that as soon as the last list was signed in 2005, and to try and align what is on the forestry list with what is happening on the ground, the National Forest Act was amended such that the minister responsible for forestry could then be able to establish a trust that will then accept and keep the rental that these companies are paying. So this trust was established. It is called the Cabello Land Restitution and Development Trust. Its main purpose is to receive the rentals that have been paid by the different companies that are leasing the land. And then it would then invest such money on behalf of the communities until the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development has identified or approved them. And then it will facilitate that funding is paid into these communities. So the trust is currently in existence. It has trustees that are from the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, from our department, from National Treasury, and from the industry. Those are the people that form part of that trust. So since the beginning of the leases in 2001, there were payments that were done only in 2011. This was only the time when there were communities that were identified, and 8 communities were able to receive their funding. They received about almost 92 million at the time. And then between 2015 and 2022, there was an additional 96 million that was paid. At the end of March this year, we had calculated the amounts that were available for each of the communities based on what has been paid or based on what has not been paid. So this slide just depicts this. And then also to say that currently the trust has about a 1 billion rand, and the funds are currently invested with the PIC. So since the beginning of, since the first payments that were made in 2011, 10 communities have been paid by the trust. In the Siakubega package, there are 4 communities that have claimed, and 3 have been settled, and the communities of Mbonambi, Western Shores, and Palane have been paid. For the Singesi package, 8 communities claimed, and 7 communities have been paid. 3 in KwaZulu-Natal, Ngonjini, St. Paul, and Nzimankulu in the Umzimkulu area. And then in the Eastern Cape around Umtata will be the Qelane, Qoqorha, Kolombana, and the Mbolombo communities. And then for the MTO forestry package, there's only one claim. That claim is almost finalized. So the department or the trust will be able to process that payment as soon as the claim is finalized. Now, we have recognized that looking at the funds that have been paid over time that are available within the trust, it doesn't correlate with the payments that have been made by the trust to the communities. Therefore, there's some effort that is currently being done to make sure that the distribution of the funds does take place. One of the important things that would need to happen is the resolution or the fast tracking of the land claims. This is done through the master plan implementation process, where rural development has prioritized the state plantations such that those claims can be finalized, and therefore the communities would be able to benefit from them. Then secondly, the department looking at the beneficiaries and how these beneficiaries could benefit from the rental funding. We are in a process of appointing a project manager that will then assist the communities in developing business plans such that the funds are used for sustainable projects that will benefit the broader community. Now moving to the category B and C plantations, which are mainly the plantations that we are managing as a department. We are managing about 110,000 hectares, where 64,000 hectares is of commercial value, in the sense that these are the areas that we are able to plant. And then 46,000 hectares is what we call non-commercial areas. These are the areas where you either have your conservation areas, which form part of the plantations, or where we are able to build roads where there are open spaces, or where there are rivers that are running through the plantations. Our plantations are mainly in the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, Northwestern Limpopo, with the Northwest with the lowest hectarage of about 200 hectares. And this slide also shows what we have in terms of the temporal and planted area per province. We see that out of the 64,000 hectares planted, about 31,000 is currently under TUP. Based on the slide before, we then looked at issues that come out that make these plantations not to be as productive as they are supposed to be. One of the issues is that the current workforce that we have is aging. I think the average years is about 58 years. And due to the fact that forestry work is labor intensive, it then becomes very difficult for the colleagues to be able to do the work and be productive as much as they were whilst they were at their younger ages. So what we are considering is through looking at various strategies in line with HR-related matters, looking at whether there could be a early retirement that can be considered, depending on the budgets, but also depending on the consultations that would need to happen with the workers and also with the relevant structures, repurposing and filling of the posts, where we've relooked at some of the posts that we have and we've managed to repurpose them. Just only in the previous financial year, we've had 18 of the posts repurposed and filled, such that we are able to get more people to do additional work. And also we have some 12 posts that have been advertised that are currently being filled. We have a high TUP, and we are trying to deal with this through the appointment of workers through EPWP to try and augment what we have. And we have a target of replanting about 1,800 hectares on an annual basis, and this is linked to our budget availability. We have high levels of theft, and this is not just in our plantations, but throughout the sector. And we are collaborating with the forestry sector through the Forestry Master Plan, as this is one of the areas that were identified in the master plan as inhibitors. So we're working with the sector in terms of assisting us and helping one another in terms of dealing with the timber theft. But also we are currently doing some training and awareness creation within the SAPS and the judiciary, so that when the crimes related to forestry are reported, then these can be taken further to try and curb the timber theft as much as possible. The other issue is on land invasions, which are mainly due to the fact that some communities who have claimed are becoming impatient because the claims are not finalized as soon as they are supposed to be. We are collaborating with the Department of Public Works and Enterprise as the landowner in terms of the court processes where it is necessary. But importantly is the engagements that we are having with the communities through the traditional leadership to try and give more awareness and stress the importance of forestry for rural economic development. So the importance that these plantations need to be protected so that there could be jobs that can be created in these areas. We are also collaborating with the Department of Land Reform in terms of the master plan process, so that there can be fast tracking of the land claims. In terms of the status of the land claims in our plantations, as I have indicated, this has been slower as compared to the category A plantations. On this slide, we see that a lot of the claims are currently at a research stage. We have 2 plantations in Limpopo where there has been a settlement, and 1 plantation in KwaZulu-Natal where there was also a settlement through financial compensation. And then in the Eastern Cape, we have 2 claims that have been finalized in Etwa and Fort Asher. But the process now of transferring the land would have to commence to close off that process. One of the major issues that we are experiencing is the issue of the land claims, and this was mainly strengthened or seen more during the lockdown period. Just looking at the Western Cape as an example, there we manage about 24,000 hectares, and these areas that we are currently now managing used to be managed through a lease agreement, which came to an end in 2019. And the plan was to then retain these areas under forestry production in line with the master plan. So we have one of the packages within that 24,000 hectares that has been heavily affected by land invasions, which is the Boland package of about 7,000 hectares. There's 2 main plantations affected there, which is the Kleikiskraal plantation and the Grabo plantation. And in Grabo alone, the count is about 400 households that are currently occupying the land. Even though we have gone through the court processes to get the preservation order so that no additional people can come into the land, we are also looking at how do we best try and make sure that the use of that land is brought back into forestry, so that to try and limit the degradation that could happen and make it difficult for the area to be managed as a forestry plantation. So we have made, we have looked at our National Forest Act and used that to see how we can try and alleviate this issue. where we are looking at the community forestry agreement, whereby the proposal is that through this act, since it promotes sustainable management of forests, where we strive to balance the social, the economic, and the environmental aspects of the environment itself, we then use Section 29 of the Act, which provides for the community forestry agreement, which is a people-centered approach where we can be able to manage these forestry resources throughout the value chain. In this a section of the Act, the minister is able to invite communities to submit offers for them to be able to enter in this agreement, where the management of the plantation could be by the community on its own, or with collaboration from us as a department, or by another state organ. So this is a two-pronged approach where the minister can invite the communities to submit offers, but also the community is able to make an offer to the department to manage such land. In terms of the offer itself, when it is submitted, the details of the membership of the community needs to be aligned so that there's an understanding of who is the leadership, what is the constitution, how are they managed, and what is it that this community would like to do. So would they want to manage the plantation for what species, for what rotation, things like that. And also if there are any land rights that this community holds in that particular land, and any information that they would deem necessary. Then what would happen for us to consider that offer? We'll then go out and do the investigation to see whether there's additional information that we would require, or it's an offer that can be taken forward through the process. Now, in terms of the principles that we consider for the community forestry agreement, there's two main principles. One is the legislative part, and the second one deals with the sustainable forest management principles themselves. So in terms of the legislative part of it, we look at it in terms of the constitution, because then the constitution allows for the agreement to be there, is the establishment of the community forestry agreement would then promote a justifiable economic and social development for communities. And we also look at our act in terms of Chapter 4, sections 29, 30, and 31, which deal mainly with the community forestry agreement in terms of how it should be done and how it should be structured. We also look at the land rights, what kinds of land rights exist in practice within that community. What are there ownership issues, and how do we deal with this? And this we liaise and collaborate with the Department of Rural Development to make sure that all the issues within that space is dealt with. Then in terms of the second principle, which is sustainable forest management, we're looking at making sure that now that we have, for instance, the master plan as our grand plan on how we want to manage forests going forward. We know that South Africa is facing timber shortages, and this is exacerbated by the fact that there isn't additional vast of land that is available for plantation forestry, due to the fact that the establishment of plantations is highly regulated. This activity is deemed as a stream flow reduction activity through the National Water Act. And we also have challenges with water in this country. So we cannot just go out and plant these plantations anyway. So we're mindful of the fact that due to the limited areas that we have, we need to make sure that we try and safeguard the areas as much as possible. So in this regard, what we look at is that the community should have a historic association or rights within the land where the proposed CFA is envisaged. And the offer must be related to sustainable forest management principles. It must contribute to the transformation of the sector. And we know that through this process, we must make sure that there is consultation, because through consultation, it's only the way that we can be able to be successful in signing off on these agreements and implementing them. We then looked at what would be the critical success factors for such an agreement. One is the offer by the community, where the offer would then determine what kind of information can be considered by the minister for her to be able to make such a decision. The negotiations that would need to take place, where there must be consensus that must be reached by the different parties. In some instances, you would find that community A would send in an offer to manage a plantation, and then there would be another community who's also interested. So in cases like that, those negotiations become important, because they need to be some understanding in terms of how these communities would probably work together, what kind of strategic partner would we want to bring in, and what would that strategic partner offer the community. So the negotiations then become extremely important. One other thing that we deem as a critical success factor is the management of the community conflicts that may arise. And we rely on the community leadership to assist us with this, so that they are dealt with as soon as possible, to make sure that they do not affect the implementation of the community forestry agreement. These three would then affect the time that it takes for us to be able to finalize the agreements. We have in the past financial year managed to finalize for 2 communities, so it is possible to deal with them within a year, but it needs that collaboration and participation from all the parties, and that need to be fully involved. Now, I think the Honorable Chair, when she opened the meeting, she had alluded to the issue of the branch where most of our budget goes to salaries, and there is limited funding that goes through for the day-to-day operations of the plantations and the other issues within the branch. So as a department, we have recognized this imbalance, and through the master plan, we are now fast-tracking the policy shift towards the future management of these plantations, where we are looking at transferring these plantations through the community forestry agreement, which I have spoken about in the previous slides, or through the PPP with the public-private partnerships with the private sector, so that there can be increased productivity in these plantations, and then there could be better management of them going forward. This will then fall within the activities of the master plan. In terms of the workers, as indicated in the previous slide, we're looking at how do we deal with reskilling of staff, and also issues related to early retirement. Should that be an offer that is acceptable to the officials? But also this is dependent on the consultations that need to be done, and also the budget availability. In terms of repurposing, we have now proposed a structure within the branch that will that is looking at aligning the functions such that there will be more focus on regulatory functions going forward, so that we are able to deal with that policy shift that was envisaged. And also, as soon as the structure is approved, there would be additional repurposing of the posts, and then there could then be movement of colleagues to the new areas that they would be focusing on, and also appointment of new staff if there is a requirement. Then we've also done a reprioritization within the branch such that there is a funding, for instance, for post-settlement support in line with the master plan. We also reprioritizing a budget so that the regulatory and the compliance functions are taken into consideration. So as part of the way forward, we are aligning ourselves within the implementation period of the master plan as a target time for us to be able to do the policy shift where we would like to see the department, especially the branch, moving towards being a regulator and moving away from the direct management of plantations through the community forestry agreements and through Section 27 of the Act. And we are also looking at leveraging of our resources for the different functions that we would then be responsible for, mainly post-settlement support, compliance and enforcement, and in line with the master plan. And then also the restructuring process that we are going through. We're also looking at collaboration and strengthening that collaboration with rural development to fast track the resolution of the claims, because as soon as those are finalized, it then makes it easier for the Cabello Trust to be able to pay the rental money to the rightful beneficiaries so that they can start to benefit from the use of their land. Then in terms of land invasions, specifically for the Western Cape, there is a proposal of entering into community forestry agreement that is currently being discussed with the different stakeholders. And obviously this requires collaboration from other government departments, the communities and ourselves, and and the industry. And then we are strengthening our collaboration with Department of Public Works, such that they assist us with the land invasions through the court processes if there's that is necessary, as they are the landowner of the land that we are currently utilizing. We are strengthening our engagements with the traditional authorities to assist us in improving the relationships that we have with the communities as a department, and also as indicated in the previous slide, the fast tracking on the of the land claims will then assist us in trying to curb these land claims. I think that is all from my side, Chairperson. Thank you for so much.
Thank you so much, DDG. Colleagues, can I see a show of hands? Colleagues who want to interact with this presentation? Paulson, you're going to be followed by Honorable Phillips, then Honorable Bryant, then Honorable Weber, in that order. Over to you, Honorable Paulson.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. Chairperson, firstly, I'd just like to tell the presenter the name of the plantation in Cabello. It's Knoflokskraal, where the 4,000 people are living. And Chairperson, I find it very strange that, number one, we've got rampant unemployment. Number two, the department speaks about an aging forestry worker with an average age of 58. Now, I don't know what it's going to be like when I'm 58, but I think it's really not the ideal job for an older person. And there are younger people unemployed that has to rather be absorbed through EPWP. And EPWP is they've outsourced that functionality to external entities to employ people. why doesn't the department directly employ people to work in its forestry plantations? That's the first question. But over and above all of that, Chairperson, there's a proposal for community forestry, especially like in areas like Knoflokskraal. But across the country, there are opportunities for community forestry and creating of employment and changing the economic imbalances that still exist 28 years into democracy. And forestry presents us with an opportunity to actually address those imbalances. And then, Chairperson, Agricultural Research Center can help us come up with drought-resistant crops. And the presentation speaks of 5 forestry provinces. Provinces where there is very little to no forestry would be provinces like Northwest, for example, and Free State. But yet, when we speak about forestation or reforestation, are we looking at introducing drought-resistant crops or trees that could be used in provinces where there's little to no forestry? And in terms of managing those forests, I think, Chairperson, it's an experiment that has failed in the sense that companies like MTO have enriched themselves. Forestry communities have not shared in the wealth of forestry, and forestry workers and forestry communities are over 150,000 people. So I'd like to know, Chairperson, in terms of those claimants to those, we always hear about it's this community, that community. I want to know, Chairperson, instead of telling me which community claimed or has a land claim on a particular forest, what are the numbers like so that we have a fair idea as to the size of that community that's laying claim to that particular forest? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
My honorable person, can I hand over to Honorable Phillips?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have just 2 questions. The one has 2 parts. The forests that we're talking about, what is the life cycle of the trees that are actually planted there? And then how mature are the forests? And then the second question I've got is it possible for the department, and especially this subsection of the department, to really go all out and do a lot of publicity on the illegal wood harvesting? And at the moment, we're losing so much wood in the Magaliesberg biosphere. If you go to the 4-way crossing outside Hartbeespoort Dam on the way to Palindaba, the packets of wood there are piled 2 meters high, and they are 10 or 12 meters long, 3 or 4 packets deep. And that's all coming from our biosphere. And we really need the department to take action now and to put it out there, because if we can stop the people from buying the wood, then we can actually stop the illegal harvesting of the wood. But by the time if we react, it's going to be too late, and there's actually going to be nothing left in the Magalies biosphere. So this is like a really, really urgent plea from my part. Please, can we have a huge advertising and education campaign to stop people from buying this wood alongside the road? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Phillips. Honorable Bryant, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. One or two questions. First one, we heard recently that 32 posts have been done away with in the forestry sector, which works out to around about 180 jobs from what I can understand. I know you've mentioned earlier that you have an aging workforce and that you have a number of people who are now unable to carry out those duties and responsibilities. How are you planning to carry out all of these master plans and white papers and all of these things that are, sound really good, if you don't have the requisite staff complement and you're doing away with posts? That's kind of a question, which I think is quite important. In terms of the unlawful settlements in Cabello that you mentioned, has any alternative accommodation been identified for the unlawful occupants yet, in terms of the court processes? And if so, where is that alternative accommodation? And then has any investigation been undertaken yet to establish whether the occupations were coordinated, and if so, who coordinated them? We've heard many allegations around those occupations being specifically coordinated, and I just want to find out if any criminal investigations are underway to ascertain whether or not that was a coordinated operation, because those people are now in a very delicate situation. And if they were taken there under false pretenses, it's important to understand who took them there and why. The fire risks, an ongoing challenge for plantations. Have recent fire risk evaluations or assessments been undertaken for plantations? And are these ongoing? And then finally, in terms of the water use, Honourable Paulson has mentioned this as well, but we know that the growing of timber is very water intensive. Are there alternatives being looked into aside from the traditional timber sources that we currently use? Thank you.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone.
Good morning. Yes, proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. My colleagues have already addressed some of them. Other than Honourable Bryant, I want to know from all the communities. I mean, Cabello is a serious issue, but when you involve communities, it means they still live on the land. And when you start your forestry and plantations, are they going to live on the premises? Are they being moved? Where will they be moved to? Where will this money come from? It is quite an expensive project. Then if we're keeping the people, the communities to keep on working there, will there be training for them to move forward into management positions and things like that? And then with the water scarcity, I would just like to add there with Honourable Brian, the lady that spoke, Poliza Ndada, she said that, we know South Africa is a water scarce country. So I would like to know if they have thought of, let me just get to it, of using drought-tolerant trees that will not use that many water, so that we can still do our timber and still do our agricultural ways, but that we do not damage our water resources as it is getting less and less. And then my last question, Chair, is Honourable Paulson. Chair, when you let someone, so many people of 58 go, you let a lot of experience, 40 years of experience going. Did the technology in timber change so much that there's no use for them anymore? Because I can guarantee you someone of the age of 58 is still very young and very strong. And although we do need to make place, these people are still breadwinners of their houses and probably the only breadwinner. So I would like to know that that is not the only solution you have, is to let people go. And what will the department do in retaining the experience that these people have, because they have been in it for their lives? So they, a young person coming in might not have that experience. So if you can just give me some information on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. Am I omitting somebody? No. Those were the hands. DM, I should think it's going to be better for us as a committee to know when the currently outstanding land claims were lodged, for the committee to be able to interact with the land claims commissioners with the aim of expediting the settlement of those claims. I think it will be prudent to deal with that. Paulson, is your hand up again? Did you omit something? Paulson?
My apologies, Chair. It's an old end.
Oh, it's old end. So that's the issue that I wanted to know, to understand when were these all land claims were lodged. And then the other issue, DDG, that I want to know, it's where are the best cases of community forest agreements that can become as role models for new entrants? And how long have those best cases of community forest agreements been in place? The other issue that I wanted to talk to, it's with regard to the issue around the national fiscus, that it is understandable to both of us that is under severe pressure, and then it may not have the requisite resources to support the management and development of forests upon transfer. But here, however, under the circumstances, there are some global funds and grants available, such as under the United Nations Environment Program. The issue that one would like to know through the DG is whether the department has started to mobilize funds to boost the management and expansion of this category B and C plantations. So the other issue in relation to that, you look at the condition of the sale agreement, that at least 16% that will be owned by the forestry community and 9% by the workers, stepping out what Honorable Paulson and Honorable Weber has raised. And then when you assume that trusts hold shares on behalf of workers, and then the self-call company holds shares on behalf of the communities, you look at that those transactions, you note that there's been non-compliance with some conditions set out in the sales agreement. Then for each company, what are the reasons for non-compliance? And what are the timelines for correcting the deviation? Because there we feel our communities are much deprived, and then something has to be done. And I think the department should be acting on behalf of the communities. And then the other issue that I think we need to confront DM. In general, the forestry sector is known to be made and white-owned despite some notable progress. In some instances, companies regress on their triple BEE scores and levels. For example, you know the case of Amatole that has regressed from being a level 3 contribution in 2017 to a level 7 contributor in 2022. Zoniselo, I was trying to say, you know, the issue of Amatole that has been regressed from being a level 3 contributor in 2017 to a level 7 contributor in 2022. Then the question one wants to ask, how are the companies where communities have been having shareholding performing in terms of the triple BE scorecards. So that's the issue, because there is also this issue that in the past, the companies indicated that they struggled to comply with some of the assessed triple BEE areas such as supplier development or provincial procurement, because there is a scarcity of Black-owned suppliers and women-owned companies. Another challenging area is the recruitment and retention of people with disability, mainly because of the heavy labor of the work that is done. Then we want to understand, what are you doing as the department, including the forest sector chapter, to help the industry to comply? So those are the issues that one wanted to raise with yourselves. Thank you. Over to you, DM and team.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chairperson, and thanks to honorable members for those questions and the inputs. Chairperson, I will then ask Pumeza and the team, that is the acting DDG and the team, to respond to the questions, and then I will then come at the end of everyone so that I can just summarize some of the issues that I've written here that I think I would be able then to give information to yourself. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Pumeza.
Thank you very much, DM, and thank you to Honorable Chair and the members for the questions. Okay. I will start with the questions that were raised by Honorable Paulson. Yes, we recognize that we have a high, the aging forestry workers within the department, and the only way we have managed to employ young people at this stage was through doing it through EPWP, but also we've recognized the limitations with that as well. So what we are trying to do right now is that as we get more people exiting the system, that is where we're talking about the repurposing of the posts, such that we are then able to restructure those posts and then appoint younger people. I think within the department, we have a target of 30% youth that we must reach. So we then try and contribute towards that. Then in terms of the community forestry agreements across the country, where we are trying to do the imbalances of the past. And I think I can link that question to the one that was raised by the Honorable Chair on the best practices for CFAs for new entrants, and how long have those been done, and if we have any that we have managed to finalize in the past. There was a community forestry agreement that we signed off in 2016 along KwaZulu-Natal, where it was a collaboration between 3 communities. And one of the issues that we have managed to learn from that experience was, if you have traditional leadership involved in the process, they are able to assist with any community conflicts that may arise. Because trying to bring those 3 communities was a bit of a challenge, in the sense that as much as they are more or less in the same area, they have different ways of doing things. And we needed to find a common ground on how can they then come together and manage these plantations. Through that agreement, the community was able to get some support from the private sector, where they were then able to replant some of the areas. Some of those trees are currently being harvested, and they are then using the funds out of that to try and refurbish more in the plantations. And they are also looking at additional activities that they can do, like planting of macadamia, which have a lower rotation, and they can be harvested within 5 or 6 years, and then they can be able to get a benefit out of that. So these community forestry agreements, as I say, there's one in KZN. We've just finalized 2 in the Eastern Cape. And what we are doing there now is we've gone back to the private sector to see how can they assist in terms of making sure that we support those communities. And we are looking at getting the communities trained in different aspects, so that one, they can be able to deal with the management part of the plantations. Some communities are going to be trained in terms of the silvicultural practices. And this I will link to the question relating to these companies when they say they are unable to get black suppliers. There's training that we did, for instance, last year in the Western Cape, where communities were trained in different aspects to try and get them into a place where they can then be able to perform some of the work. We are going to do follow-up training with the support from the fiber manufacturing SITA, who supported us as well last year for us to be able to do the training that we did for the contractors. In terms of the drought-resistant crops, there is some research that was commenced through the sector that there's some tree breeding exercises that are currently being done, where we are looking at how we can get some trees planted in areas that are drier, which would be drought resistant, some which would be fire resistant, and all of that, in line with the change in climate that we are experiencing. So there is some work that is currently being done in that space. And we don't have much results as yet, but that is the work that is currently being done with the sector. So I think what we could probably do is to just get the exact information of where the work is being done, and then we can supply that to the community. In terms of the communities that have claimed in these plantations, I was just trying to look quickly in my laptop, but I think I've failed to multitask. I think we can request, Honorable Chair, if we can provide the information with regards to not just the name of the community, but the number of beneficiaries in each of those communities, if we can be given that opportunity to do that. And we can also link that with the year that those claims were lodged as part of the additional information that we can provide. Then in terms of the questions from Honorable Phillips around the life cycle of trees, what we are currently planting in our plantations and what is also planted throughout the sector, we have the eucalyptus, which are your gum species that are usually have a rotation of about 7 to 8 years. And then we have the pine species that are between 20 and 25 years until they are able to be harvested. Now, in terms of our plantations, the distribution of trees in terms of maturity is very skewed, as you saw in the presentation, that we have a lot of areas that are temporarily unplanted, which then means that we have a lot of areas where we have smaller trees than mature trees. I don't have the stats at hand to say exactly how many hectares we have on mature trees, but we can provide that to the committee as well if it's acceptable. But what we have right now in our plantations is mostly younger trees that would need a couple of years for them to mature. The issue of timber theft has taken us a bit backwards, because the mature trees that were there have then have suffered that loss. We will also take up the plea from Honorable Phillips of doing the awareness on the Mahalis biosphere in terms of the education campaign. So we'll take that up and try and create as much awareness as possible in terms of communities understanding the use of those trees and the importance of those trees versus the destruction that is currently happening there. And then Honorable Bryant's questions with regards to the 32 posts that we've done away with. What we've done is we've looked at the staff complement, and most of the posts that we have is what we call lower level posts, which are usually the level 2 and 3s, which are mainly the posts that would be aligned with the plantations. So what we've done there is to try and repurpose those such that we are able to create posts that we would want to use going forward, because we are now trying to look towards the future. Because if we are saying we want to transfer the plantations and get them managed by different entities, then we would then need to make sure that going forward, we have the staff complement that will then be aligned to that. So there's this repurposing of the 32 posts will then be aligned to what we want to achieve through the master plan, where we've created posts directly for the coordination of the master plan, where we've created posts for post-settlement support, and where we have created posts for extension services. So that's how we've tried to deal with the issues of the master plan. In terms of the identification of alternative land for the land invasion, we had started doing that exercise of looking at different options, but we don't have a firm property, if I may use that word, that we have agreed on that we can use for as alternative accommodation. This requires ourselves, DPW and the municipality in the area to agree on what is possible, because once the people are moved, then we'd have to deal with issues of service provision of services such as water and all of that. So that collaboration or that discussion with the municipality is still underway. There was an investigation that was started to look at whether, what was the issue with the occupation, or was there any coordination on that. I do not have the full details right now, but I think through our colleagues in legal services, we can provide that information. In terms of fire risks, we do the assessments on an ongoing basis, such that we now are affiliated as a department to the fire protection associations, and we are currently paying our membership fees, so that we get the support from the FPAs in terms of support should we have fires, and we are also doing our fire breaks. We have in the past year managed to also buy new equipment that we need for the creation of the fire breaks and also for the fighting of fires. I think the one on the water use I've already responded to in terms of the research that is currently being done to look at what species can we plant and where those could be planted. Okay, I think for the questions from Honorable Weber with regards to the movement of the communities, I've responded to that. The training of communities, yes, one of the pillars of our post-settlement support strategy deals with the provision of technical advice and also training to the communities, where we want to make sure that as these communities take up management of plantations, they are trained. So it's something that we have started to do, but it's something that we will roll out as we go along, as we transfer these plantations. Then in terms of the workers that are 58 years and above, yes, it is a lot of experience, and that is why we want to make sure that we don't lose that experience through the reskilling that I spoke about, where we can still retain some of them who are still willing to be part of the system, such that they can then either become the supervisors who then would be able to train the younger staff that would come in. But as I indicated, even though the age is, at 58, it's still an age where people can work. But due to the manual labor of the work that we do in the plantations in terms of the planting, climbing on trees and pruning and all of that, it becomes a bit difficult when they are of that age. But they do have the experience that we obviously need, and we would like to make sure that as we bring in younger people, we are able to pair them with those through the different strategies that we have. Then in terms of Honorable Chair, okay, I've requested, Chair, that if we can give you a detail in terms of the years these claims were lodged, because I will not know from the top of my head right now for all the communities. We can provide that and also link it with the question that was raised by Honorable Paulson. I've spoken about the CFA that we signed in 2016. In terms of the getting assistance on international funders to try and expand the plantations, we've looked at some of the international funders that we have, and I think it's something that we will continue to pursue. There was some funding that we received from the United, what is it called? United Nations Forum on Forests Secretariat, where they provided us with support of consultants who assisted us in developing these international proposals. So we have we've now done the first phase of it, where we've consulted and agreed what type of projects we would have. Those projects include issues of afforestation, where we are expanding. It includes issues of conservation, but these will still need to be submitted, and then we will see what kind of support we can be able to get. But I think it's an area that we probably need to strengthen and get more proposals going out. In terms of the non-compliance with regards to shareholding, we've had a discussion last month between the different DGs from our department, Rural Development and Public Enterprise with SAFCOL, to see how we can try and fast track this issue of shareholding, such that this shares can then be moved from SAFCOL to the relevant communities. A team has now been brought in together from these different departments, because what is key there is making sure that the right communities are identified, so that these shares can then be transferred to to the communities. So that is a process that has been spearheaded by our DGs and that is currently underway. In terms of the companies that have regressed on their BEE scores, what we currently working with the Charter Council in terms of trying to understand what the issues are. As the chair has mentioned, there's the issue of the scarcity of black suppliers, and we will do that through training and through the lease agreement where we meet with the companies on a quarterly basis. We try and track whether companies are able to get new contractors and what kind of training they're doing for the contractors. Some of them have started now to train the different upcoming contractors such that they can be at a level where they can tender for the jobs. And I think we would need to then, between ourselves and the Charter Council, look at how we can strengthen the work of the council so that it can have more teeth when it comes to issues of compliance with regards to the companies that are not complying. I don't know, Chair, if I have missed anything. Maybe the Deputy Minister will be able to assist me. Thank you.
Can I share?
Yes, DM.
Oh, no, thank you very much, Chairperson. I was just going through my scribble here. I see that you have indeed touched on most of the things that members would like to have information on. And also to add on the issue that was raised by Honorable Weber, I think it was with regard to the communities that are supposed to be removed from the forest land. I didn't hear you correctly, Pumeza, but I just added by saying that Minister Creasy and Minister Dalil has established a team that is working with ourselves and the municipalities in trying to resolve the problem. Therefore, I think that was the only area that I thought maybe I should say something on. But to add on that, on what you said, Chairperson, in your questions with regard to the global funding, and I think Pumeza responded well on that one. But I also just wanted to give information with regard to what then happened when we attended the World Forest Congress in Korea, where then we had a one-on-one with the Korea Ministry of Forest Service, where then we proposed a collaboration and which was accepted. And then we were then requested to identify areas that we needed to be assisted with as a country. And then some of the areas that we identified, we identified research, development, and innovation, support to forestry, small and medium-sized enterprises. We also then requested for forest financing, in particular to small and medium-sized enterprises. And also on the issue of the furniture making skills and development, and some other areas that we agreed upon with the department or the Ministry of Korea Forestry Services. And as a follow-up to that, then we requested to establish a team which then consists of ourselves and the Department of Forestry Service in that country, and then they are being facilitated by our embassy in Seoul. Therefore, these are some of the things that I think they will assist us when it comes to the issue of the implementation of the master plan. Thank you very much, Chairperson. And of course, we will invite you. I think you requested maybe that you can get information. Information can be made available to you with regard to the launch. I'm sure that that information you will be then forwarded to yourself, because there is a lot of a transfer of the plantations activities that will happen from now onwards, of all those that has been approved by both ourselves and Department of Rural Development. We will then be informed about all these activities. Chair, I think these are the issues that I've tried to note down so that I can respond to. Unless there's any other thing that the chairperson felt we didn't respond effectively, then we'll be guided by yourself. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Honorable Brian, your hands up.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, it's not a follow-up question as much as it is a request that all of the commitments that have been made in terms of information to be provided are followed up on. I know the Forestry Department is normally very good at providing us with that information. Sometimes some of the other departments, we haven't really received that information. So I'm sure the Forestry Department will provide that info. But I think in particular, just from my side, the investigation report that was promised and from the legal department, if we can try get that by the end of this week, Chairperson, with your assistance, that would be fantastic, so that we don't lose track of some of these bits of feedback. The other one that was also very important, I think, was a request from Honourable Paulson, and in terms of the numbers of claimants and that information is vital, and I just hope that we can get that by the end of this week as well. Thank you, Chair.
I think you have captured what I almost wanted to say. And DM, indeed, we believe we are going to get those responses as promised. And then, yeah, the acting DDG has been good in doing that. But I think you'll agree with me, colleagues. I do not know what is your take on today's engagement on plantation or industrial forestry. Because after having heard all the comments, questions, and responses, one feels that the problem is not so much about the way how the department manages the plantation forestry now, but it's so much about where the forestry branch was coming from. You'll recall that the Forestry and Water were one, constitution the Department of Water Affairs and Forestry. Then, where the forestry seemed to have some stability, it was in the department where the restructuring of industrial forests should have happened. Then, at a later stage, DM, forestry was moved to agriculture long after the disbandment of the Department of Water Affairs and Forestry. And more recently is now in our department. DM, I'm the view that it's high time for us to work closely with the department to find a lasting solution to the plantation forestry issue during our tenure, before the end of this sixth parliament when it expires. Even if we have to schedule regular meetings with the department to then continue to dispose of this seemingly protracted matter. I think this is my parting shot, DM, as and when we close. I think this was one of the shortest meetings we've ever had. So then it gives us the opportunity to go and log in for the plenaries that are sitting, unless somebody whom I didn't cover. Silence means the meeting has come to the end. Thank you so much, DM and team, DFFE.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and the team. Thank you very much to honorable members. We will indeed give the information, Honorable Bryant. That is outstanding. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, DM.
The meeting gets adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Enjoy
Bye.
the rest of the day, colleagues.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Joseph,
Praise God.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. You're going on the public hearing, yeah?
Yes, I will be going.
Okay.
Yes.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, I think we're traveling on Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay, you just check us here.
I think Shileka's daughter is here. Because I think someone needs to end the meeting. Peter Paul?
Sure, Dada.
Unjani?
Ngona mjani.
All right. So who shall end the meeting?
The recording is stopped.
I'm a co-host, but I can only just leave. But I'll speak to Lerato now.
Okay, all
So
right.
the recording is be safe.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
All right. I'm down.
All right. Yeah. I think we'll sort out the other things relating to the hearings closer to the time. But we had a few preparatory meetings to take care of some of the aspects.
Yeah, but I was wondering whether there are submissions or there are no submissions.
Chileka indicated that there was about just below 6, if not 4, from the forestry bill, and I think it's 10,000 from the climate change.
You know,
Yeah, so she's saying the few that she opened, some of them is just few sentences, and others it's a bit longer.
I needed to ask you. You haven't seen the forestry submissions. You haven't.
No, she has not sent them yet, because I think we have not discussed how we are going to handle that, because she had mentioned that we'll probably need to consider the on one part adjusting the planned program for public hearings with a view of compressing the time so that it does not run through September.
Yeah, you know, the issue is not so much about the public hearings, but for me, I think the issue is the substance is in this submission to Joseph. What we are going to be talking about during the public hearings is going to go into service delivery to have absolutely nothing to do with the bill, you know. That's the concern that I have. That's why I'm more interested in this public submissions, but go and have a feel of what it is like, then probably, yeah, then we will have a better picture in addition to this submission. But
Prescott, hold it there. On this Parliament YouTube streaming, is it still broadcasting?
I don't know. But the recording is stopped.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether.
Okay, let's leave the meeting.
Yeah, I think let's leave the meeting